I will never forget the sound before I saw anything. The soft, nervous laugh that did not belong in my kitchen. It was the kind of laugh people make when they know they are doing something wrong but cannot stop themselves. I stood very still at the bottom of the stairs, one hand on the banister, my heart banging like a door in a storm. The clock above the stove ticked. The refrigerator hummed. And then I heard my husband's voice, steady, familiar, and far too warm. "Shh, Claire," he whispered. "Just a minute more." "Claire." "My daughter-in-law." My breath caught in my throat. For a second I thought I was hearing things. Maybe I had mixed up voices. Maybe the TV was on. Maybe the old house was playing tricks with echoes. But when I stepped forward and the floorboard gave its usual creak, the nervous laugh stopped. Panicked whispers. Fast shuffle. The clink of a glass. I pushed the kitchen door open. There they were by the sink in the afternoon light. My husband, Richard, tall, silver hair, sleeves rolled up, and Claire, young, brown eyes, red sweater. His hand was on her waist. Her face was flushed. They jerked apart as if burned, but too late. I saw it all. The closeness. The guilt. The red hands. "Mom, Janet, I can explain," Claire blurted, her voice thin and shaky. Richard said nothing. He looked like a boy caught stealing cookies. Then he did something worse. He reached toward me as if to comfort me. I stepped back so fast I hit the doorframe. "Don't." My voice came out low and strange. "Do not touch me." The room spun and I grabbed the counter to steady myself. My mind flashed like a short film. Claire in her wedding dress next to my son, Evan. The day I pinned a blue rose to her bouquet. The time I taught her how to make my mother's apple pie. The first Christmas we had together. Every smile felt like a lie now, and I could taste metal in my mouth. "Janet," Richard started again, This isn't what you think." "Oh," I said. "Then tell me. Tell me what I think." He opened his mouth and closed it. Claire stared at the floor, fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. The clock ticked louder. I heard our neighbor's dog bark outside like the world was still normal. I am Janet Walker, an 82-year-old retired school nurse from Cedar Falls, Iowa. I have been married to Richard for 58 years. I am a blonde grandma who still fixes her hair with soft rollers every morning and wears the blue cardigan my granddaughter says makes me look cozy. I don't have many close friends left, but the ones I have, I love with my whole heart. I raised one son, Evan, and I have always said that being his mother was the best work I ever did. Thought I knew my home. Thought I knew my people. Thought I knew my life. Until that day. "Start at the beginning," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Tell me how long this has been going on." Richard did a small, hopeless gesture with his hands. "It was a mistake." "A mistake," I said. "Like forgetting to buy milk? Or like setting the house on fire?" Claire looked up. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never meant to hurt you." "You married my son," I said, and the words scraped my throat. "He loves you." Her eyes filled, but I could not reach for her. Something inside me, something soft, had frozen. "I'm not cruel. I am not loud. I am the grandma who knits you a scarf when you catch a cold, who leaves cookies at your door when you have a bad day." But that afternoon I felt a new part of myself wake up. It was made of sharp edges. "Evan doesn't," Claire began, then stopped. She bit her lip, glanced at Richard, and swallowed. "Doesn't what? Doesn't know? Doesn't love me? Doesn't come home enough?" The questions buzzed like flies and I wanted to swat them all away. I took a breath. "Move away from each other. Sit down. Now." They obeyed like children sent to the principal's office. Richard sat at the table, shoulders slumped. Claire sat across from him, hands clasped. I stayed standing, leaning on the counter because my knees shook. "Here is what we will do," I said. "You will each speak. One at a time. No lies. Few I will know. I have looked into too many feverish eyes, held too many frightened hands, and seen too many truths come out at 3 a.m. to mistake them now." Richard nodded, eyes on the table. Claire wiped her cheek. I pointed to Richard. "You first." "I don't know how it happened," he said. "I was lonely." "Lonely?" My laugh was short and hard. "You sit across from me at breakfast every morning. You walk with me around the block. We watch the news and complain together like a pair of old crows. How is that lonely?" He winced. "Evan works late. Claire stops by to help you with groceries, to fix the Wi-Fi, to be kind," I said. He looked at Claire, then at me. "We talk." We talked too much. We should have stopped. I closed my eyes for a second. Talking can be more dangerous than people think. Words slip and slide, and before you know it, they've carried you somewhere you swore you'd never go. I turned to Claire. And you? She stared at her hands. I felt invisible, she said. Evan is always on the road with work. He says it's for us, for our future, but I eat dinner alone most nights. Your house, it felt warm. You made tea. You listened. Mr. Walker fixed the leaky sink. I told myself it was just family. She blinked. And then I lied to myself. I felt something crack in me, anger mixed with a strange, unwanted understanding. I am old, yes, but age does not make you blind. I remember what it feels like to be hungry for a hand to hold. But understanding is not the same as accepting. Some lines must never be crossed. Not by family. How long? I asked. 3 months, Richard said. 2, Claire whispered. They could not even agree. The clock ticked again. Outside, a car door slammed. Life went on even while mine felt like it had stepped off a cliff and was still falling. I took another breath, slow, counting to 5 the way I teach my great-granddaughter when she has a tantrum. My heart calmed enough for me to think. This is what you will do, I said, my voice steady now. You will tell Evan. Today. Claire's head shot up. No, please, let me talk to him first. Let me explain. You will explain, I said, by telling the truth. Richard rubbed his temples. Janet, think about this. We can handle it quietly. No need to blow up the family. The family is already blown up, I said. I'm just asking you to stop pretending the smoke is perfume. He flinched. Silence stretched. A kettle would have screamed on the stove, but ours was cold. I wished for the simple sounds of a normal day. The clatter of plates. The wash of water. The cheap radio playing songs from when I was young and foolish and thought love was always a straight road. I stood taller. I will call Evan, I said. He deserves to hear it from me. Not from whispers. Not from a rumor you will both try to tidy up. Claire let out a small cry. He'll hate me. I wanted to say you should have thought of that. But the truth sat heavy in my throat. I had once made a terrible mistake too. 50 years ago, a young nurse and a handsome doctor laughed too long in a supply closet. It never went as far as this, it never crossed that final line. But I remember the heat of almost and how close it can burn you. I told Richard the next day and we spent a month sleeping back to back, our backs like 2 cold cliffs. We chose each other again. We promised to never hide again. And here we were. Maybe, I said softly. Maybe he will. Maybe he will forgive you one day. Either way, truth first. Then we deal with the rest. Richard looked at me. Something like fear cut through the gray in his eyes. Janet, he whispered, if you tell Evan, he'll leave her. He'll take the baby. I stared at him. The what? Claire pressed her hands to her stomach, just a quick, unconscious touch, and I saw it. A small, secret motion. A shadow crossing a face. The baby, I said slowly, the word tasting new and old at once. Claire's lip trembled. She nodded once, barely. I grabbed the back of a chair. The room tilted. For a moment, I heard only the roar of my own blood. A grandchild. My son's child. A cold wind seemed to sweep through the warm kitchen. The worst thought, the one that would not form, pressed at the edge of my mind like a door I did not want to open. Whose baby? I asked, my voice a thin thread. Claire's eyes filled with tears and Richard's hand twitched on the table like it wanted to reach out and was afraid. Don't, I said. Don't make me ask again. No one answered. I picked up the phone from its cradle on the wall. My fingers shook, but I dialed my son's number anyway. I listened to the ring. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, Evan picked up. Hey Mom, he said, cheerful and tired all at once. Give me 2 minutes. I just parked. What's up? I looked at Richard. I looked at Claire. I looked at the soft afternoon light that made our old kitchen look gentle and kind when it was now a battlefield. Evan, I said, forcing my voice not to break, you need to come home. Something has happened. What? Is Dad okay? Are you okay? I'm standing, I said. I am strong. Just come. Right now. Mom, you're scaring me. Good, I said. Be scared enough to drive safe. He laughed nervously. 5 minutes. I'm turning the car around. I hung up. The air felt tight. I counted my breaths again. Claire whispered, "Please, Janet, I'm begging you, let me talk to him first. Let me find the words." "Truth is the only word," I said. "We will all say it together." The front door opened. Cold air rushed in. Evan's footsteps hit the hall fast, sure the way he used to run to me when he was 5 and scraped his knee. "Mom," he called. "Dad?" "Claire." I turned toward the doorway, my heart trying to climb out of my chest. Richard stood up. Claire covered her mouth with her hand. Evan walked into the kitchen and saw our faces. The smile fell off his. "What happened?" he asked. I opened my mouth to speak. And behind me the back door rattled hard as if someone outside was trying to force it open. The sound was sharp, rattling the old wooden frame of the back door. We all froze. Evan's eyes darted from my pale face to Richard's guilty stare to Claire's trembling hands. He had only just stepped inside, but the storm was already waiting to break. "What the hell is going on?" Evan demanded, his voice louder this time, sharper like it had grown claws. Before I could answer, the door rattled again. A loud knock followed, 3 quick bangs that made the dishes in the cupboard tremble. Claire gasped and grabbed the edge of the table. Richard stiffened, his hands balling into fists. "Who is that?" Evan asked, his head whipping toward the sound. I shook my head slowly. "I don't know." But inside, a tiny, cruel thought whispered, "Who else knows?" Richard cleared his throat, trying to sound calm. "Stay here. I'll check." "No," I snapped, the word bursting from me. "You will not." Evan frowned. "Mom." I cut him off. "You sit down, Richard. You've done enough." He glared at me for a second, but then his shoulders sagged and he sat back down like a boy scolded by his teacher. The knocks came again. Louder. This time with a voice. A man's voice. "Claire. Open the damn door." The kitchen fell silent except for the pounding in my ears. Evan turned, his eyes widening. "Claire." She covered her mouth. Her lips trembled. "Claire," Evan said again, his voice low, dangerous. "Who is that?" No answer. Just her body shaking like a leaf in a storm. "Open this door right now," the man's voice bellowed again, angrier this time. Evan started toward the door, but I caught his sleeve. "Wait." My mind was racing. Who could this be? Friend? A stranger? Or, God help me, someone else she had secrets with? Claire finally spoke, her words small and broken. It's Michael." "Michael?" Evan snapped. "Who the hell is Michael?" Claire's eyes closed, tears slipping down her cheeks. My ex." The kitchen air turned heavy, so heavy I thought it might crush us all. Evan stepped back, staring at her like she was a stranger. "Your ex? Why is he here? Why does he know where we live?" "I didn't," she began, but her voice cracked. "I didn't think he'd come." Richard slammed his palm on the table. "For God's sake, Claire. Don't you dare raise your voice at her," I snapped back at him, surprising even myself. My anger wasn't for protection. It was because I wanted every word in this house to cut him the way he had cut me. The pounding at the door came again. "Claire. I know you're in there. Don't play games with me." Evan's face drained of color. He looked at Claire, then at Richard, then back at Claire. His mouth opened, then closed. He couldn't form words. "You," I said, pointing at Claire with a shaking hand. "You will tell my son everything. Right now. Before that man breaks down the door." She shook her head wildly, her blonde hair sticking to her wet cheeks. "Please, Janet, please, not like this." "Exactly like this," I said, my voice low, steady, like the nurse's voice I had used on dying patients who wanted mercy but needed truth. The knob of the back door twisted violently. Evan stormed past me, his jaw tight. "No one is breaking into my house." He flung the door open. Cold night air rushed in, carrying the sharp scent of rain. On the porch stood a man in his 30s, tall, dark jacket, fists clenched. His eyes darted inside, landing on Claire instantly. "There you are," he growled. Claire whimpered. Richard stood up, half between her and the stranger. Evan looked from one to the other, his voice tight as steel. "Somebody explain this. Now." The man, Michael, took a step forward, his eyes burning. "She hasn't told you, has she?" Evan's voice rose. "Told me what?" Michael pointed at Claire's stomach. "That baby isn't yours." The words dropped like a bomb. My chest seized. Claire let out a choking sob. Richard's face went pale as paper. Evan staggered back a step like he'd been punched. Me. I stood frozen, gripping the chair so hard my fingers hurt, because the nightmare I had been pushing away all afternoon had just stepped into my kitchen and spoken out loud. The truth, or something worse than the truth, had come crashing through the door. Michael's words hung in the air like smoke. That baby isn't yours. Evan didn't move. He blinked once, twice, as if blinking might change the scene in front of him. It didn't. We were all still here in my kitchen. Me 82 and shaking, my husband Richard gray and guilty, Claire pale and crying, and this stranger on our porch spitting fire like a broken match. I did what old nurses do when chaos walks in the door. I took a breath and tried to steady the room with my voice. Everyone stop, I said low and firm. No one takes another step. No one shouts. We are going to talk. Michael smirked, eyes cold. Talking is what she's good at. Lying too. Evan swallowed hard. His jaw worked. He looked at Claire like she was a picture he didn't recognize anymore. Tell me he's wrong, he said, voice thin. Tell me he's lying. Claire hugged herself. Tears slicked her cheeks. Evan, she glanced at Richard, then back at my son, then down at the floor. I never wanted to hurt you. That's not an answer, Evan said. His hands were shaking. He hid them by curling them into fists. Richard pushed his chair back with a scrape. That's enough, he said to Michael. Get off my property. Michael laughed once. Your property? Cute. You should have kept your hands off your daughter-in-law if you care about property lines. His gaze slid to Claire's stomach. He lifted his chin toward Richard. Tell him. Or I will. I felt the world tilt again like a boat in fast water. I put my palm on the table to steady myself. I remembered the day I taught Claire how to roll pie dough on this very counter. I remembered her telling me she loved the way our house smelled like cinnamon and soap. I remembered her tiny thank you notes tucked under my teacup. Memory is cruel when it carries both sweetness and knives. Michael, I said, trying to thread my voice with calm, if you know something, say it without poison. He lifted his hands like a man giving a show. Fine. Truth time. She told me she was pregnant 2 months ago. I asked if it was mine. She said no. Said it was her husband's. He jerked his head at Evan. But then I saw her at the clinic with him. He stabbed the air toward Richard. Paid in his name. Walker. Not Evan's. Not hers. His. Richard flinched. I was helping with a bill, he muttered. Helping. Michael barked. Buying silence. Evan's eyes shot to Richard. Dad. My husband's mouth opened and closed. I could see 100 thoughts run across his face like birds scattering. Shame. Fear. That old pride that never liked being questioned. He chose the smallest truth instead of the biggest one, like a child picking the least bitter medicine. I didn't want her to worry about money, he said. I looked at him, really looked. The man I met at a church picnic, the man who danced me around a gym floor with a crooked grin, the man who rubbed my shoulders after long shifts. The man who had just set fire to our family with a match called Lonely. I thought, how dare you make me the one to clean the ashes? Evan's voice scraped out of him. Claire. Tell me. Whose baby? Claire's fingers worried the edge of her sweater. She didn't look at anyone. I don't know, she whispered. The room made a sound like a collective gulp. Michael swore under his breath. Evan stepped back as if she had pushed him without touching him. Richard's face went the color of skim milk. You don't know. Evan repeated. His voice rose and cracked. You don't know if I'm a father or a fool? Claire broke. It was like watching a glass fall in slow motion. Her shoulders folded. A sound came out of her that was more animal than human. I'm sorry, she cried. I'm sorry. I was lonely. You were gone. He was, she choked, swallowed, and blurted it. It's not Michael's. Silence. Then Michael's face twisted. Excuse me. Claire's head lifted, eyes raw. She swung her gaze to him with sudden anger. You hit me, Michael. You think I forgot that? You think I forgot who you are? She wiped her face with the back of her hand. This isn't yours. Evan's shoulders rose, a breath caught high in his chest. If it's not his. He turned, slow as a door on rusty hinges, to face Richard. Then whose? Richard stared at the tabletop. His hands flattened on the wood like he could press the truth down and it would stop moving. I saw his throat work. For a heartbeat I thought he would lie. Then I saw it. The smallest nod, almost nothing, but I have watched dying men try to hide pain before. I know the body better than the mouth. The nod was real. Richard, I said quietly, look at your son. He raised his eyes. The room held its breath. Dad. Evan said, voice barely there. Richard swallowed. I don't know. It was almost the same answer as Claire's and somehow worse. Don't know from a woman lost in shame is a plea. Don't know from a father is a betrayal wearing a suit. Michael scoffed. Of course he knows. You think I don't have proof? He yanked his phone from his pocket, swiped and thrust it toward Evan. Read the name on that transfer. And the memo line. Evan took the phone like it might bite. He stared at the screen. His face hardened as if the lines were carving themselves deeper by the second. He read, voice flat, R. Walker. $1,200. Ultrasound, keep this between us. Something old and quiet inside me snapped like a dry twig. Get out, I said to Michael, the words clipped and cold. You've delivered your poison. Leave this house. He shrugged. Gladly. But if anyone tries to pin this on me, I'll bring the rest. I've got screenshots. Dates. Times. His eyes flicked to Richard's. You're not as careful as you think, Grandpa. Evan moved like he might hit him. I stepped between them without thinking. Thin old body, big old courage. No one hits anyone, I said. Not in my kitchen. Not in my lifetime. Michael sneered, but he stepped back onto the porch. Enjoy your little family meeting. He pointed at Claire. I'll be waiting for your call. The door swung shut with a hollow thud. His footsteps faded. Rain began to spit against the window. The kitchen sagged with the weight of what he'd left behind. Evan set the phone on the table like it was a rotten thing. He looked at Claire, then at Richard, then at me. He was my baby again for a moment. Wide-eyed, hurt, asking for a bandage I didn't know how to give. We're getting a test, he said. Tomorrow. No more guessing. I nodded. Yes. Richard rubbed his forehead. Evan, listen. No, Evan snapped. You had your chance to be a father. Right now I need truth, not stories. Claire wiped her nose with a shaking hand. I'll do the test, she whispered. Whatever you need. The rain thickened, pattering like fingers on the roof. A draft slid under the door and found my ankles. I felt very old and very awake. I thought of vows. I thought of family. I thought of the way secrets rot the floorboards under happy houses, quiet and slow until one day you fall through. I reached for the landline. My hands were steady now. I'm calling the clinic, I said. We'll book the earliest appointment. Richard touched my wrist. Janet. I pulled away. Not cruelly. Not loudly. Just enough. Don't, I said. He stared at his lap. For the first time that day I saw something like shame sit down inside him and stay put. The phone rang at the clinic. A tired woman answered. I gave our names. I said, paternity and soon. She found a morning slot. I wrote it down on the notepad by the fridge in letters too big and dark. When I hung up, the house made a tiny sound like a held breath let go. Evan nodded. Thank you. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to take his head in my hands like I used to when he had fevers and whisper, I've got you. You're safe. But this hurt was not the kind hands fix. This hurt was the kind you walk through and hope you don't lose yourself along the way. A low boom rolled across the sky. Thunder. The lights flickered and held. Claire shivered. I pulled a throw from the back of a chair and tossed it to her. She caught it like a lifeline and tucked it around her shoulders. I'll make tea, I said, because sometimes boiling water is the only thing that keeps a person from screaming. I turned to the stove. My hands knew the dance. Fill the kettle. Set it on the flame. Find the mugs. The small jobs of an old woman who has survived many storms by chopping them into single minutes she could manage. Behind me, Evan's voice softened for the first time. Claire, why didn't you tell me? Before it got this big. Her answer came out small. I was afraid you'd leave. He stared at the table. You didn't give me a chance to stay. The kettle began to whisper. I watched the tiny steam ribbon curl. My chest ached with the wish to rewind time 12 weeks, 12 days, 12 hours. But time is a road that only goes one way. A sudden crash shattered the moment. Glass exploded from the back window. A rock, no, a brick, shot across the room and slammed into the cabinet, splintering the door. We all ducked. The kettle screamed. Claire shrieked. Evan spun toward the shattered glass. On the floor, tied to the brick with string, was a plastic bag. Inside it, a printed photo, grainy, lit by the harsh glare of a clinic hallway. Richard and Claire standing too close at a counter window. His hand on her back. The date stamped in the corner. Yesterday. Richard stumbled backward, knocking his chair to the floor. Blood flowed from his palm where a shard had cut him. He didn't seem to feel it. Evan grabbed the bag with shaking fingers, ripped it open and stared at the picture like it might bite him. Outside, a car engine roared and faded into the rain. I moved to the kettle and turned off the flame with a hand that finally trembled. The house smelled like wet air and metal. The phone slid in my slick palm as I dialed 911. Emergency, the operator said. What's your situation? Someone just threw a brick through our window, I said, voice clear. We need officers. I looked at my son, my husband, my daughter-in-law, the photo on the table that felt like a sentence. And maybe an ambulance. Is anyone injured? I looked down. Blood was dripping from Richard's cut, red threading across the tile, curving toward my shoes. He swayed. Ma'am, the operator pressed. Is anyone hurt? Richard's eyes rolled. He crumpled, hitting the floor hard. The sound made my bones go cold. Yes, I said, my voice breaking as I slid to my knees beside the man who had broken my heart and was still my husband. Yes, someone is hurt, he's bleeding, he's not responding. Stay with me, the operator said. Help is on the way. Tell me if he's breathing. I pressed my fingers to his neck, counting like I had 1,000 times in hospital halls. A pulse thin and fast. He gasped and coughed. Claire sobbed. Evan stood between the broken window and his fallen father, fists clenched, chest heaving, the photo crumpled in his grip. Rain sprayed through the jagged hole. Sirens wailed far off and then closer, filling our street with sound. And just as I turned back to Richard to lift his head, Evan's phone buzzed on the table, lighting up with a message from an unknown number that read, "Tomorrow is too late." The words on Evan's phone glowed like fire. Tomorrow is too late. My stomach turned to ice. The sirens outside grew louder and red-blue lights splashed across the rain-smeared walls. My son's face looked carved out of stone as he stared at that message, the veins in his neck pulsing. He tightened his grip on the phone so hard I thought it might crack. Who sent this? He demanded, looking from Richard, still on the floor, pale and bleeding, to Claire, who clutched the blanket around her shoulders like it was armor. Claire shook her head, eyes wide. I don't know. I swear I don't know. You don't know. Evan's voice was sharp, raw. He thrust the phone toward her. Somebody just threatened our family, threw a brick through our window, and you don't know? Claire shrank under his words, tears brimming again. Evan, please. I touched Evan's arm, my old fingers light against his anger. Not now. We need to keep Richard awake. I pressed a dish towel hard against Richard's cut. His blood seeped through quickly, warm and sticky. His eyes fluttered open for a second, then closed. Stay with me, I whispered, bending close. You don't get to check out like this. Not tonight. Richard groaned, trying to speak. His lips formed one word, sorry. I almost laughed, but it came out as a sob. You'll say that when you're standing, not lying on my floor. The pounding of boots echoed through the hall. 2 officers rushed in, followed by paramedics hauling bags and a stretcher. The kitchen filled with voices, commands, questions. Flashlights scanned the broken window. One officer bent down to pick up the shattered brick, bagging it like evidence. What happened here? One of them asked, his eyes sweeping over the chaos. Blood on the tile, glass glittering under the lights, Richard pale and sweating. Before I could answer, Evan's voice cut through. We were attacked. Someone's threatening us. He held up his phone. They just sent this. The officer leaned over to read it, his expression tightening. We'll need to see that message. Can we take your phone? Evan hesitated, then handed it over. Find them. The paramedics lifted Richard onto the stretcher. He groaned, his hand twitching in mine before they pried my fingers away. I followed them with my eyes as they wheeled him out, the rain spitting harder now against the flashing lights outside. Which hospital? I asked, my voice steady though my knees shook. Cedar Falls General, one paramedic replied, already moving. I nodded, committing it to memory. I would be there. Somehow, some way. The officer turned back to us. Ma'am, sir, we're going to need statements. Do you know who might have done this? Evan's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked to Claire, then away. Yeah, he said finally. We have an idea. Claire's shoulders shook. Evan, please, don't. Don't what? He snapped. Don't tell the police that my wife, my pregnant wife, is caught between my father and some abusive ex who just smashed our window? The officer raised an eyebrow, pen ready. Your father. I closed my eyes for a second. There it was. Out loud. To strangers. The truth dragged into the open like a body from a river. Claire sobbed into her hands. The officer scribbled quickly. We'll need names. Addresses. Anyone who's made threats. I lifted my chin. His name is Michael. He was here an hour ago. He threw accusations and left in a black sedan. He has a temper. The officer nodded. We'll put out a lookout. Evan gave him the number that sent the text. The officer copied it, his face grim. When the chaos thinned, when Richard was gone to the hospital and the officers had stepped into the rain to radio updates, the kitchen sagged into silence. Just me, Evan, and Claire. The kettle still sat on the stove, silent now, but I hadn't poured the tea. My hands shook too much. Evan leaned against the wall, his head in his hands. God, he muttered. How did my life turn into this? Claire reached for him, but he stepped back. Don't, he said. One word, sharp as glass. Her hand dropped. Her face crumpled. I wanted to hold him, to gather him up like the boy who once brought me a frog in his pocket and cried when it jumped away. But he wasn't that boy anymore. He was a man with his heart torn in 3 directions. Toward his father, his wife, and a child who might not even be his. We'll get answers tomorrow, I said softly, though the words on his phone echoed in my head like thunder. Tomorrow is too late. The rain hammered harder against the broken window. The wind shoved through the jagged hole, rattling the cupboards. And then, faint but clear, I heard it. Under the storm, under the sirens fading down the street, 3 slow knocks. Not on the door. On the glass of the front window. I froze, my breath locking in my chest. Evan lifted his head, his eyes wide. Did you hear that? Another knock. Deliberate. Measured. Claire gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. I turned toward the front hall. The lights flickered once, and in that brief moment of shadow I saw it. A figure standing outside the window, unmoving, watching us. When the lights blinked back, the figure was gone. But pressed against the glass, left behind, was a single handprint. Wet, red, and unmistakably smeared in blood. The red handprint on the glass glowed under the porch light like a warning from another world. My heart stopped, then hammered so hard I pressed my hand to my chest. Evan rushed forward, his shoes crunching on the glass already scattered across the floor from the earlier brick. He leaned close to the window. Jesus Christ, he whispered. It's blood. Claire whimpered behind him. It's him. Has to be Michael. He's playing games with us. I stepped closer, squinting through the rain-streaked glass. The handprint was smeared, the fingers long, the palm heavy, like someone had pressed with all their weight before pulling away. Outside, the street shimmered with wet light, but the figure was gone. Evan spun back to me. Mom, lock the doors. Every single one. Now. I nodded, my legs trembling as I moved toward the back. My hands shook so badly on the locks that I had to press them twice to be sure. Claire trailed after me, her voice a whisper, thin as tissue. Why is he doing this? Why can't he just leave us alone? Because, I said quietly, he wants power. And fear is power. I remembered nights in the hospital when women came in with bruises they called accidents. Men like Michael fed on silence, on secrets, on weakness. And our house was full of all 3. When I came back to the kitchen, Evan had his phone pressed to his ear. Yes, officer. He's back. He left blood this time. No, I don't know if it's his or someone else's. Please just send someone fast. He hung up and dragged a chair under the doorknob. He was breathing hard, his hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. We should go, he said suddenly. Right now. Pack a bag, get in the car and drive to the station ourselves. Claire shook her head frantically. No. We can't. What if he's waiting outside? What if he follows us? Then we stop running, Evan snapped. We end this. I touched his arm. Son, ending this might not mean what you think. He looked at me, his eyes wild. Mom, he threatened my wife, my family. He could kill us. Before I could answer, the landline rang. The shrill sound cut through the storm, jolting all of us. We froze. Evan's eyes darted to me. I moved first. My hand shook as I picked up the receiver. Hello. Static. A low hum. Then a voice, low, distorted like it was filtered through a machine. You won't make it to tomorrow. The line went dead. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering against the counter. Evan grabbed it, but the dial tone was already gone. He slammed it down, his chest heaving. Claire burst into sobs, rocking back and forth in the chair, the blanket falling from her shoulders. We're dead. Oh God, we're dead. I knelt in front of her, forcing her to meet my eyes. Claire. Look at me. You're not dead. You're still breathing. So long as you breathe, you fight. Her wet eyes locked on mine. But what if the baby? I gripped her cold hands. Then fight twice as hard. For both of you. Evan paced, pulling at his hair. Why us? Why tonight? Why all at once? I wanted to say because secrets breed like rats and now the house is full of them. But I stayed quiet. He didn't need riddles. He needed a plan. Headlights swept across the wall outside. Tires splashed in the rain. Then, thank God, the sharp flash of police lights. They're here, Evan said, running to the door. 2 officers rushed in, rain dripping from their jackets. Their radios crackled. We saw the print, one said. We're canvassing the block now. But you 3 need to stay inside, away from the windows. Do you understand? Yes, I said, my voice steady. Claire sat silent, rocking. Evan nodded tightly. The officer glanced at the broken glass, the crumpled photo still on the table, the blood-streaked towel I'd used on Richard. You folks are in the middle of something serious. Lock every door. Stay in one room. If you hear anything, don't open the door. Call us. When they left, the house felt smaller, the walls pressing closer. Evan dragged the couch in front of the front door. Claire curled up on the chair, shivering. I stood at the window, staring at that smeared red handprint, praying silently, though I wasn't sure anymore if I prayed for safety, for truth, or for strength to endure whatever was coming. Then a sudden thud from upstairs. We all froze. Another thud. Slow. Heavy. Like footsteps. Claire's eyes went wide. There's someone in the house. Evan grabbed the fire poker from beside the hearth. Stay here, he hissed. No, I said, my voice sharp as a whip. We stay together. We don't split. Not tonight. The next thud came louder, closer. And then, clear as a bell, a voice floated down the stairs. A child's voice. High, sweet, and chilling in its wrongness. Grandma? Claire clutched my arm, trembling. Janet, that's impossible. The kids are with my parents tonight. Evan tightened his grip on the poker, his knuckles white. Then who the hell is calling for you upstairs? The sound of that childlike voice made every hair on the back of my neck rise. Grandma? It floated down the stairwell again, soft and sweet, like a lullaby gone wrong. Claire's nails dug into my arm. Janet, she whispered, I swear on everything, the kids are at my parents'. No one is supposed to be here. Evan's grip on the fireplace poker tightened until his knuckles whitened. His eyes never left the staircase. Stay behind me, he ordered. I swallowed hard. My knees shook, but I stood tall. No. We stay together. We move as one. The house was silent except for the storm outside and the dripping of rain through the shattered window. The air smelled of wet earth, blood, and something faintly metallic, like old pennies. Another thud upstairs. This one closer. Deliberate. Evan moved slowly toward the stairs, his jaw clenched. If someone's in my house, they picked the wrong damn night. Claire whimpered, clutching the blanket around her shoulders. I put my hand over hers. Steady, Claire. We need clear heads now. We reached the foot of the stairs. The hall light flickered above us. The shadows twisted, stretching up the staircase like long fingers. And then, the voice again. Grandma, help me. I froze. The sound pierced straight through me. It was almost identical to the way my granddaughter Lily calls me when she scrapes her knee. The exact tone, the pleading lilt. My breath caught, and for one foolish second my heart leapt forward. Lily? But no, Claire was right. The children were miles away. My stomach churned with dread. Whoever was up there knew how to break me. Don't go up, Claire begged. Please, Evan, don't. He looked back at her, his face torn between fear and rage. And let someone wander in my house? No. Not happening. The voice came again, closer, clearer. Grandma, it hurts. That was too much. My body moved before my mind could stop it. Lily. I cried out, stepping onto the first stair. Evan grabbed my wrist. Mom, no. That's not her. I stopped trembling. He was right. Logic screamed at me, but my heart still ached as though it were real. We climbed, slow and tense, step by step. The hallway upstairs stretched long and dark. The storm rattled the windows, casting watery shadows across the walls. At the far end of the hall, Lily's bedroom door stood open. A faint glow spilled out, a flickering light like a candle. Evan raised the poker. Stay behind me, he muttered again. We approached the doorway. My breath was shallow, every step a battle against the urge to run. Inside Lily's room, the glow came from a small battery lantern on her nightstand. It rocked slightly as though moved by unseen hands. On the bed was something worse. One of Lily's dolls propped up against the pillows, its painted smile wide, its glass eyes glinting in the shaky light. And smeared across the doll's face in fresh, wet red, was a child's handprint. Claire gasped, covering her mouth. Evan swore under his breath. Pinned to the doll's chest was a note, scrawled in jagged handwriting. You can't protect them. Not the baby. Not anyone. Midnight. The lantern flickered and went out, plunging us into darkness. And then footsteps. Heavy. Running. Not in the hall but from downstairs. Evan spun, poker raised. Claire screamed. I grabbed the doorframe to steady myself. My pulse thundered in my ears. Whoever had lured us up here wasn't here anymore. They were down there. In the kitchen. Where the photo. The blood. The phones. And all of our answers still lay. The thunder rolled again, rattling the old windows as we froze at the top of the stairs. The sound of the footsteps downstairs had stopped. Too sudden, too deliberate. Silence sat heavy, the kind that presses against your ears and makes your own heartbeat sound like a drum. Evan whispered, poker still raised, he's trying to draw us out. Claire clutched the blanket tighter around her. Or lock us up here. Oh God, what if he sets the house on fire? Her words lit a fresh fear in me. The storm's howling wind, the shattered glass, the bloodied messages. Whoever was tormenting us wasn't just cruel. He was patient. Calculated. And desperate men with patience are the deadliest kind. I put a hand on Evan's shoulder. We can't wait for him to come up. The kids' room is no battlefield. We have to move. Evan nodded. He took a slow breath, then started down the stairs, his body tense as a drawn bow. Claire followed, her steps shaking while I brought up the rear, my old legs heavy but steady. At the bottom, the kitchen light was still on. The broken window whistled with wind, rain spraying the counter. The foam was gone. So was the photograph. My stomach dropped. He was here, Evan whispered, scanning the room. He was right here. I stepped toward the table. The note that had been pinned to Lily's doll now sat in the center, weighted down by a kitchen knife. I leaned close. The words were smeared with damp but legible. Confess before midnight. Or everyone pays. My knees wobbled. Confess. The word bled into my chest like ink. Confess what? Whose secret did he want dragged into the light? The affair? The baby? Or something worse none of us had yet said aloud? Claire's breath came in ragged gasps. He's playing with us. He wants us to tear each other apart. Evan slammed the poker down on the table, making us all jump. Then tell me the truth, Claire. Right now. Whose baby is it? No more crying, no more silence. Whose? Claire flinched. She looked at me, then at him, then at the empty doorway as if praying the storm would swallow her. Her lips trembled. I think it's your father's. The words hung like a guillotine. Evan's face crumpled. His jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth would break. His voice cracked, thick with fury and disbelief. Think? You think? Claire sobbed, sinking into the chair. I don't know for sure. But Michael was before, and your dad and I. She buried her face in her hands. Evan spun toward me, his eyes raw, desperate. Mom, you knew. His voice cracked into accusation. You had to know. My throat closed. My silence was answer enough. The room felt colder. Rain lashed harder through the broken window. The clock ticked, cruel and steady. Midnight, Evan whispered. That's what he said. He glanced at the clock on the wall. 11:07 p.m. Less than an hour. Then from the back of the house, a soft creak. A floorboard groaning under weight. Evan lifted the poker again. His voice dropped. He's still inside. Claire gasped. My breath caught. And before any of us could move, the lights snapped off. The house drowned in darkness. Claire screamed. I grabbed the edge of the counter, my heart pounding like a war drum. Somewhere in the shadows, something shuffled. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. And then a voice in the dark. Low, mocking, close enough to taste the words. Time's running out, Grandma. The voice slithered through the pitch-black kitchen. Time's running out, Grandma. My breath locked in my chest. My name unspoken, yet my title chosen like he wanted the knife of it twisted deep. Claire whimpered, her sob muffled against the blanket. Evan gripped the poker so hard it scraped against the tile when he shifted. I reached for him, found his arm and squeezed once. Not to stop him, just to remind him he wasn't alone. The storm outside beat harder against the house. Rain hissed through the broken window, making it impossible to tell if the footsteps I heard were inside or out. The darkness made the kitchen feel infinite. Show yourself, Evan growled. If you're man enough to break into my house, be man enough to face me. Silence. A thick mocking silence. Then a soft chuckle, low, cruel, far too close. It came from the hall. No, from the pantry. Or was it the stairwell? The sound shifted like smoke. Claire clutched my sleeve. He's playing with us, she hissed. Yes, I whispered back. That's what predators do. A sudden crash, metal clattering across the floor. Pots, pans spilling out from the cabinet by the stove. Claire shrieked. Evan swung the poker wildly into the dark. Stay still. I snapped, my nurse's voice cutting through. Don't give him your fear. Another shuffle. Then the beam of a flashlight snapped on, slicing through the dark. It darted across the walls, blinding in its quick passes. Evan shielded his eyes. Coward, he roared. The light landed on the table, illuminating the knife still pinning the note. But the note had changed. My stomach dropped. In thick, fresh marker scrawled across the paper in block letters. One of you won't live to see midnight. Claire let out a ragged sob. Oh God, oh God. I moved closer, my old legs steady despite the terror clawing at my insides. Listen to me, I said firmly, addressing them both. He wants us broken before the hour strikes. He wants us to destroy each other so he doesn't have to lift a finger. The flashlight beam snapped upward, landing square on my face. I flinched but held my ground. Why me? I called into the dark. My voice shook but I pushed it louder. What do you want from me? Pause. The light trembled, then dipped, sweeping across Richard's chair. Empty now, the cushions still dark with his blood. The voice came again, closer this time, a whisper turned into a growl. Because you let it happen. My heart lurched. My throat tightened. He knew. Not just the affair. He knew I had seen it in their faces before anyone spoke, and I'd stayed silent long enough for it to rot. Evan turned, fury burning through the fear. What the hell does that mean? Mom, what does he mean? I opened my mouth but the words tangled. The truth I'd buried for weeks. That I'd seen the way Claire lingered near Richard. That I'd caught whispers, looks, touches in the air thick with suggestion, and I'd told myself it was nothing. Because I wanted peace. Because I wanted my son happy. The silence after the voice's accusation was worse than the storm outside. Evan's eyes cut through the dark toward me, suspicion creeping in. And then, another sound. Heavy footsteps stomping across the porch. The front door rattled violently, then burst open. A flashlight beam cut the dark again, but this one was steady, professional. A voice barked, "Police." The kitchen exploded into chaos. Officers swept in, weapons drawn. The flashlight, the other flashlight, clicked off instantly, swallowed by the dark. Hands up. Now, the officer commanded. Evan dropped the poker, raising his hands. Claire sobbed into her blanket. I stood frozen, my palms trembling in the air. The officers fanned out, their boots pounding the floorboards, clearing each corner, each doorway. But after 2 tense minutes they regrouped, their radios crackling. No one, one officer muttered. We searched every room. He's gone. My stomach knotted. Gone. Just like that. Another officer lifted the note from the table with gloved hands, frowning at the words. We've got a threat in writing. This isn't over. The storm thundered outside, rattling the glass. Midnight crept closer on the ticking clock above the fridge. 11:37 now. The lead officer turned to us. We'll have a patrol car outside until dawn. But I'd advise you not to be alone. And if anyone contacts you, call us immediately. When they left, the silence was heavier than before. Evan lowered his hands slowly, his face carved in stone. He's still here, he said softly, not looking at me or Claire. Not in the house. In us. And at midnight, something's going to break. The clock ticked again. 11:38. And from the shattered back window carried on the storm came the faintest sound. A lullaby. A child's lullaby hummed in a deep male voice. It was Lily's favorite bedtime song. The lullaby drifted through the broken window, soft and haunting, threading itself through the storm. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. My chest tightened. That song, I'd sung it to Evan when he was small, rocking him through fevers. Claire sang it to Lily every night. And now it crawled into our house, carried on a stranger's voice. Evan stormed to the window, rage trembling in every line of him. Show yourself, he bellowed into the rain. Come out, you coward. But there was nothing. Just the hiss of the storm. The handprints still smeared on the glass glistened in the police lights outside. I touched Evan's shoulder. Don't give him what he wants, I whispered. He feeds on our anger. He turned to me, his face pale, wet hair clinging to his forehead. What does he want then, Mom? Because he's tearing us apart. And I can't. His voice broke. I can't lose everything in one night. Before I could answer, the wall clock ticked loudly, the second hand jerking forward. 11:59. Claire let out a shaky sob. She sank into the chair, clutching her stomach. It's starting. I feel sick. I can't breathe. The house fell utterly still. No more lullaby. No more shuffling. Just silence. And then the landline rang. Violent. Evan lunged for it, snatching the receiver. Who is this? Pause. Then a low voice, steady, certain. Confess. Evan's knuckles whitened around the phone. Confess to what? To my wife sleeping with my father? To this sick game? What do you want? The voice repeated firmer. Confess. Or she dies. The line clicked dead. Claire screamed, clutching her belly. Her body curled forward. Something's wrong, she gasped. The baby, it hurts. Panic surged through me. Evan, call the paramedics. Now. He fumbled for his cell, dialing with shaking fingers. Claire slid from the chair onto her knees, moaning. My hands went to her shoulders, steadying her. Breathe, Claire. Just breathe. The storm howled. The lights flickered, dimmed, then steadied. And at the exact stroke of midnight, the front door swung wide open. Not from the wind. From a hand. Michael stepped inside, rain dripping from his jacket, his face shadowed. He held something in his hand, something that glinted in the light. A gun. Time's up, he said, his voice cold. Evan stepped in front of me and Claire, his arms spread. Don't you dare. Michael sneered. You think you can protect her? Protect any of them? He lied to you, Evan. Lied about me, lied about your father, lied about that baby. You've been living in a house of liars. Evan's voice shook with fury. Put the gun down. This ends tonight. Michael raised it higher, his hand steady. Exactly. It ends with truth. Claire sobbed, her voice raw. Michael, please, don't do this. He pointed the gun at her. Then tell him, Claire. Tell him whose baby it is. Right here. Right now. Or you won't live to see it born. The clock ticked past midnight. 1 second. 2. Claire's breath hitched. Her eyes darted to Evan, then to me, then back to Michael's gun. Finally, her voice came out, broken but clear. It's Richard's. The words hung heavy in the air. Evan's face shattered. Michael's smirk spread like poison. I felt my knees weaken, my heart squeeze until I thought it might burst. Evan staggered back, his arms dropping. He looked at me, his eyes hollow. You knew, he whispered. Didn't you? You knew and you said nothing. Tears blurred my vision. I hoped I was wrong. The truth was a knife. And now it had gutted us all. Michael cocked the gun. There it is. Truth. His grin twisted. Now nobody wins. But before he could pull the trigger, red and blue lights blazed through the windows. Police shouted from the porch. Drop the weapon. Now. Michael froze. For the first time his hand trembled. Evan lunged, slamming into him. The gun clattered to the floor, skittering under the table. Officers stormed in, tackling Michael, pinning him down, snapping cuffs around his wrists. Claire collapsed against me, sobbing. Evan stood over the chaos, his chest heaving, his face pale and broken. The house was filled with shouting, radios crackling, the storm still raging outside. But underneath it all, the truth lay between us, raw, ugly, undeniable. My husband was in the hospital. My son's marriage was in ruins. A child was coming into this world under the shadow of betrayal. And I, Janet Walker, had lived long enough to see my family split apart by secrets I hadn't had the courage to stop. As the officers dragged Michael out, his eyes caught mine. He smiled, a slow, chilling smile, and whispered just loud enough for me to hear. "This isn't over, Grandma." And in my bones I knew he was right. The storm had passed, but the house still felt full of thunder. Rainwater dripped through the jagged window into little puddles on the tile. Police radios crackled outside, fading as officers loaded Michael into the back of a cruiser. His voice still echoed in my head. "This isn't over, Grandma." Inside, the silence was worse. Claire sat on the floor, wrapped in her blanket, her face streaked with tears, her breaths shallow. Evan leaned against the wall, arms crossed, staring at nothing. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. I lowered myself into a chair, every bone aching, my heart heavier than any weight I'd carried as a nurse. For a long time no one spoke. The only sound was the steady tick of the kitchen clock, marking each second of a family forever changed. Finally, Evan broke the silence. His voice was hoarse, scraped raw. "So it's true. My father. My wife. My child." Claire tried to speak, but he held up a hand. "Don't. Just don't." His eyes closed. "Do you know what it's like to love someone so much you ignore every warning sign? Every whisper? And then realize the people you trusted most cut you open anyway?" His words stabbed because they weren't just his. They were mine too. "I know," I whispered. His eyes flicked to me. "You knew." I swallowed. My throat burned. I suspected. I saw little things, smiles that lingered, silences too heavy. I wanted to believe it was nothing. I wanted to protect you. But silence can wound deeper than words. He stared at me, and for the first time that night his anger cracked. His face crumpled and he whispered, "Why didn't you tell me?" Tears blurred my eyes. "Because I was a coward. Because I thought if I ignored it, it would fade. I was wrong. And now we all live in the ashes." Claire shifted, clutching her belly. "Evan, I never wanted to hurt you. I swear I didn't. I was lonely, and your dad." "Stop," Evan cut in, his voice sharp again. "Every excuse just makes it worse. You were my wife. That was enough. Or it should have been." She sobbed, rocking gently, whispering, "I'm sorry," over and over like a prayer that no one answered. I reached for Evan's hand, but he pulled it away. "Mom," he said softly, "I can't stay here. Not tonight. Not with her. Not with..." His voice cracked and he gestured at the blood-stained towel still crumpled on the counter. "Not with any of it." He grabbed his coat from the hook, his movements jerky, mechanical. He paused at the door, turning back once. His eyes softened for a heartbeat, looking at me. "You were always my anchor, Mom. Don't let this sink you." And then he was gone. The door clicked shut. The silence he left behind was louder than the storm. Claire curled tighter into herself. "He hates me," she whispered. I stared at her, at the girl I'd once welcomed into my family with open arms. My voice came out tired but firm. "He has a right to. Hate doesn't last forever, but betrayal carves deep. You'll carry this scar whether he forgives you or not." She nodded weakly, tears sliding down her face. The clock struck 1 a.m. The house creaked as if it too were exhausted from holding so much sorrow. I rose slowly, my legs trembling, and went to the window where the bloody handprint still smeared the glass. The rain had washed most of it away, leaving only a faint outline. Like all stains, it would never truly vanish. My reflection stared back at me in the glass. An old woman with pale hair, tired eyes, and a heart that had seen too much. I thought of Richard in the hospital bed. Evan driving into the night, alone. Claire broken on the kitchen floor, carrying a child whose future was wrapped in lies. And me, the grandmother who thought silence was mercy, and learned too late that silence is sometimes the sharpest blade. I pressed my palm against the faint print on the glass, matching it. A day I will never forget, I whispered. And one I will never forgive. The night held its breath. The storm had passed, but the storm inside us had only begun.